Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Dutit. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. If you've been joining us at the top of 10 a.m. East Coast every day, you know what I'm going to tell you. These are feeds coming into the CBS News Broadcast Center from all of our stations and affiliates around the country. If there is news breaking anywhere where CBS is, we're going to bring it to you live right here. Let's begin. Lawmakers are demanding action and calling for answers as the number of mysterious drone sightings skyrockets across the Northeast. Plus, RFK Jr. heads to Capitol Hill today as he looks to drum up support for his bid to be the next U.S. Health Secretary. And a rare Northern California tornado. We're going to take a closer look at the destruction left behind. This is CBS News 24/7. President-elect Donald Trump's pick to lead Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is on Capitol Hill this morning. He's expected to meet with dozens of senators this week in hopes of gathering enough support to get confirmed. Now, he may face some scrutiny for past comments, though, on vaccines. So let's bring in CBS News Congressional correspondent Nicole Killion, who's joining me now from West Palm Beach, Florida, where the president-elect is expected to address the press at 11 a.m., Nicole. So what are we expecting to hear?
Well, the president-elect is holding an event around business, international finance, so we expect his remarks to center around that. But it's possible that he could take questions, of course. That is something, too, that we are very much interested in. But, of course, this comes after he hosted the widow of the late Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe at Mar-a-Lago last night, along with his wife, Melania Trump. And so it caps off a pretty busy weekend that the president-elect has had. He spent part of it in Florida, part of it this week at the Army-Navy Games. So now starting this Monday, again, with these remarks to the press a short time from now.
So he has said that he plans to speak with RFK Jr. about plans to eliminate some vaccines. Of course, that has a lot of people concerned, Nicole, as you know, including some of the comments that he's recently made about polio vaccines. Look, when I was a foreign correspondent in Africa, I recall that Nigeria, where I was based, was one of only 3 countries in the world, Nicole, Nigeria, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, that had not eliminated polio, largely because they had not been able to vaccinate the appropriate number of people. Since then, Nigeria has eliminated polio, but that is what we can expect if those vaccines go away here in the United States. So how is the president-elect dealing with that controversy?
Well, I think we have to take a step back here, and I think that is why the president-elect is saying that he intends to have a discussion with RFK Jr. about the path forward here. Transition aides say that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. isn't necessarily pushing to get rid of all vaccines, but he does want to make sure that they are effective and safe, and if some merit further review, that is kind of more where he's coming from, where the president-elect is coming from. That being said, there is some concern based on RFK Jr.'s past views and statements and some of his associates. He at times has suggested that vaccines have led to an increase in autism, which has been disproven by a number of medical experts. There is also one of his personal attorneys who filed a petition back in 2022 to revoke approval of the polio vaccine. And this is someone that he still associates with, who has reportedly been part of the transition. So from that standpoint, that is why there is some concern about, where exactly RFK Jr. kind of falls in this spectrum of views. We did actually try to ask RFK some of those very questions because he was here in Florida this weekend, but he declined to respond to our questions. But that is certainly something that could come up in these meetings that he has this week with senators, although some have expressed cautious optimism about potentially supporting his nomination. So that being said, the president-elect, again, making clear that he does want to have an ongoing discussion with RFK Jr. going forward.
All right, Nicole Killion for us this morning. Thank you, Nicole, as always. And we will bring you President-elect Donald Trump's remarks live as soon as they begin. That should happen in the 11 o'clock hour Eastern Standard Time. Meanwhile, lawmakers on Capitol Hill have a few more days to vote on a short-term spending bill. It will need to be approved this week to avoid a government shutdown right before the holidays. The continuing resolution has to be approved in both the House and the Senate by Friday at midnight. CBS News political reporter Torian Small is tracking those talks on Capitol Hill and joins me now. Torian, so what are some of the major issues holding back this continuing resolution?
Yeah, it's unclear if Democrats and Republicans see eye to eye on the level of spending. Speaker Mike Johnson has said that the goal is to push this deadline back, which, as we know, is midnight on Friday, to March. So into a new administration is when they're looking to kick the can down on any substantive spending changes. But we know that the Farm Bill, the 2018 Farm Bill, was a sticking point because Democrats and Republicans couldn't see eye to eye on reauthorization of that. So that's also a conversation of how much money they spending toward reauthorizing agriculture appropriation. But then we also know hurricane relief is a huge issue as well. The Biden administration is asking for a number that Republicans don't see eye to eye on. This is, of course, after Hurricane Helene and Milton. So those are the conversations we're watching as we get closer to this Friday deadline. I should note, though, that Speaker Johnson said before Congress recessed over the weekend that Sunday was the date he was eyeing to release the text of this stopgap measure. We haven't seen that text yet.
So, Torian, let me ask you about FEMA and those hurricane-ravaged states that have been waiting for critical hurricane disaster relief. What's on the table, and will there be enough to fund the volume of those disaster relief loan requests?
Well, it's unclear just how much Republicans are looking to pare back. President Biden asked for Congress to appropriate $100 billion in funding, and Republicans have repeatedly said that that number is just not enough. They want to be thorough in investigating where exactly this money will go and how it will be utilized. But we know that there are some areas of Virginia, for example, that are still requesting quite a significant number of federal funds for their recovery cleanup efforts. So it's unclear if Republicans and Democrats will see eye to eye on that. But again, the deadline is this Friday, so they have to work quickly in order to get something done.
All right, Torian Small reporting from the Hill this morning for us. Thank you, Torian.
Thanks, Vlad.
Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is on the mend after emergency surgery in Germany. The 84-year-old tripped and fell while at an event in Luxembourg and fractured her hip. According to her office, California Democrat had a successful hip replacement surgery Saturday at a U.S. military hospital in Germany. Now, Pelosi was part of a congressional delegation marking the 80th anniversary of the Battle of the Bulge. Fun fact, General George Patton is buried in Luxembourg. Okay, a rare tornado ripped through a California city near San Francisco. Officials say it was overturning cars and toppling trees outside a mall in Scotts Valley on Saturday. Several people were sent to the hospital. The twister also triggered the first ever tornado warning in San Francisco. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with the first look at the national forecast. Hi, Grant.
Hey, good morning, Vlad. Crazy to hear about tornadoes in California, where actually California averages about 11 tornadoes a year. Typically, they're in the northern part of the Central Valley, but you don't hear about them in the San Francisco area, that's for sure. San Francisco is waking up to some rain moving through the area. This is all associated with kind of a moderate atmospheric river, and this will continue to produce not just rain in the lower elevations, but here we go again, more higher elevation and mountain snow. You got several winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings, and some winter storm watches in effect for the next several days. Some places in the higher elevations could pick up 1 to 3 feet of snow, while the lower elevations are just going to deal with quite a bit of rainfall. In fact, some places could see up to 7 inches of rain, specifically up towards Oregon and Washington State. Watch here. This is a forecast model as we go through the next several days, and that's going to bring several rounds of rain. We'll pause it there Tuesday morning. We see a little bit of a break before another round, and that stream of moisture starts to pump in more of that rain along the Pacific Northwest coast. We'll take you into Wednesday afternoon, a little break once again, and then you see another system beginning to take shape back off into the Pacific Ocean. Meanwhile, we've got a cold front moving across the Central Plains. We'll talk about what that brings. You better believe it, more cold air, while we're relatively mild but wet along the East Coast this morning. Vlad, back to you.
All right, Grant, thanks very much. Really interesting. Appreciate it. The suspect in the shooting death of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson could be transported to New York as early as this week to face second-degree murder charges. He's currently being held in Pennsylvania, where he is fighting extradition. CBS News Crime and Public Safety Unit Coordinating Producer Anna Schechter has been closely following the case, and she joins me now here in Studio 55. Good to see you.
Hey, Vlad. Great to be here.
So let me ask you, the first question I think a lot of people want to understand is why would he fight extradition to New York? Is there a particular reason why it matters whether he's here in the state of New York or in Pennsylvania?
It's a great question. I think initially his tactic was delay, push this back. He was defiant. You saw him shouting as he was being ushered by cops into that courtroom. But now he's hired a high-powered, very experienced lawyer who worked in a prosecutor's office for 3 decades. And she has seen the mountain of evidence that investigators have against him. And she's thinking, you know what? We don't need to fight this extradition. Let's just get him to New York and let's navigate through the court system as smoothly as possible. And I think that's why we heard Alvin Bragg on Friday say that this could happen very quickly, as soon as tomorrow.
Wow. And so take us through what happens once he is here in New York. They don't have to share any of the grand jury deliberations or evidence with his attorney.
That's right. So already he's been charged with second-degree murder, but we're told that we could expect to see a first-degree murder charge come down based on all the evidence. Now, this in New York is usually reserved for law enforcement who are killed by a suspect. But in this case, this high-profile case, given all the evidence, I think we're probably going to see Bragg try to bring that higher charge because he's got so much on this person, and they feel so confident they have the right guy.
And as someone who's done this for quite some time, is it surprising to you that with all of the technology, when the story first broke, you were talking to officials, you were talking to investigators as they were trying to track the suspect down, and we were talking about DNA, and we were talking about the cameras that are all over New York City and facial recognition, and at the end of the day, it came down to just an ordinary person at a fast food restaurant saying, hey, you know what? That dude's eyebrows and his eyes look very particular. I think I've seen him somewhere else. Oh, yeah, on this wanted poster, called in the tip.
Such a great point, because technology can only take us so far. And sometimes investigators can be blinded by data. They were flooded with tips and flooded with thousands of hours of surveillance footage. And even that facial recognition technology, it didn't work because of the awkward angle pointing down at his face.
I didn't know that.
It didn't pop a positive ID. They literally didn't know who he was. They did not have an ID on the suspect until that Altoona police officer said, okay, yeah, we've got the right guy. They arrest him. And it's thanks to the McDonald's, the people in McDonald's who recognized him. And then they found the gun on him. They found the ammunition on him. They found the clothing on him. And that non-manifesto 300-word writing addressed to the feds, essentially acknowledging the crime.
Wow, fascinating. Anna Schechter, thank you very much for being here.
Happy to be here.
Appreciate it. All right, thousands are feared dead after a massive cyclone battered the French territory of Mayotte. The latest on the rescue efforts. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Heartbreaking images coming in as the worst cyclone in nearly a century strikes the French territory of Mayotte in the Indian Ocean. Rescue workers are scrambling as we speak to reach the remote archipelago, which is home to around 300,000 people. You can see entire neighborhoods that have just been flattened. Officials fear the death toll could be in the thousands. We'll keep you updated as we learn more developments there. Meanwhile, 2 Russian tankers continue to spill oil after they were damaged during a heavy storm in the Black Sea. Video shows the bow of one tanker sinking vertically and the second ship drifting, leaving oil streaks behind. At least one person was killed. How much oil is leaked is still being determined. The ships were carrying almost 9,000 tons of fuel oil, according to Russian state media. Mysterious drone sightings continue to cause a stir on the East Coast. This weekend, police arrested 2 people for what they call hazardous drone operations near Boston's Logan Airport. Donald Trump's pick for the White House National Security Advisor, Florida Congressman Mike Waltz, says the American people deserve answers.
Well, I think what the drone issue points out are kind of gaps in our agencies, gaps in our authorities between the Department of Homeland Security, local law enforcement, the Defense Department. I think Americans are finding it hard to believe. We can't figure out where these are coming from.
CBS News correspondent Tom Hansen is live at the Hazlitt Police Department in New Jersey this morning. Tom, good to see you, my friend. So we spoke with an expert on Friday who says it's going to take a village of local and federal law enforcement to track these drones down. What are you hearing on that effort?
Yeah, well, we do know that this is a coordinated effort that's bringing in the DHS and the FBI to assist with local law enforcement when it comes to tracking these drones. Now, what that actually looks like is somewhat unclear as we stretch into another week of this unraveling mystery. We do know that there is growing frustration on behalf of lawmakers. Democrat Chuck Schumer came out over the weekend calling on the federal government and DHS to deploy sophisticated drone tracking technology. Now, I was on the phone with DHS last night. I asked exactly what that looks like. They said that they could not disclose that information at this time, so they are treating this with a lot of sensitivity, which kind of gets at the mystery of it all. There are a lot of cooks in the kitchen when it comes to investigating this and trying to track it down, exactly who's behind these drones, what they're doing here, what the intentions are, if they are in fact safe, or whether or not they're a threat. But not a lot of answers just yet. And, you know, if anyone does have the answers, they're certainly keeping it close to the vest at this point. But that's not stopping people from being extra cautious. One other incident that we are just learning about this morning, one of the Air Force bases in Ohio, the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is a very important and sensitive site for the U.S. Air Force. They had to shut down their operations for about 4 hours over the weekend because of drone activities there. So we're also seeing reports of these mysterious drones starting to spread even beyond the East Coast. Now, you have to take some of these reports with a grain of salt. You know, we were told time and time again that while we are, you know, reporting that there are sightings into the thousands of these drones, a lot of those calls could be reporting manned aircraft, as we heard the federal government say last week. They could also be multiple reports for one singular drone. So the scope of this problem also becoming clearer, but still a little foggy, Vlad.
So Tom, what are officials saying that people should be doing if they see something in the sky?
Yeah, well, here in Monmouth County, which is sort of a hot spot in the general New Jersey region, they're telling people not to call 911 if they believe that they have spotted just one drone. You should use the non-emergency phone lines so that authorities here can still respond to other critical needs within the community. They do say, however, if you're spotting several drones, perhaps 5 or 6, and they are weaving in a pattern and flying at a low altitude, then you should be alerting authorities to those, and also, of course, submitting videos to your local authorities if, in fact, you do come across one of these mysterious drones, Vlad.
All right, Tom Hansen for us this morning. Tom, thank you, my friend. Appreciate it. Okay, breaking this morning, ousted Syrian President Bashar al-Assad appears to have issued his first statement since the fall of his regime over a week ago, giving new details about his final hours in Syria before being evacuated to Russia. A statement was posted to the social media account of the Syrian presidency. It claims Assad was moved from the capital of Damascus to a Russian airbase in Syria on the morning of December 8th as the rebels moved in. He claims the base came under, quote, intensified attack by drones before Moscow ordered an immediate evacuation that evening. He also says that at no point during the events did he consider, quote, stepping down or seeking refuge. Now, with the fall of his regime, many now wonder what the future holds for the country. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams has more from eastern Syria.
We have spent the last several days here in eastern Syria with American-backed forces that control around a quarter of the country. In the city of Raqqa, that's the former ISIS capital, the headquarters of the so-called Islamic State, we saw those American-backed forces patrolling city streets where they've brought stability and security. But the American-backed forces are worried that the collapse of the Syrian regime in Damascus and a power vacuum that may develop in its aftermath could give ISIS an opportunity to try and stage a comeback. There are even concerns that ISIS could try to join up with some of the rebel forces that toppled the regime. We also visited a high-security jail in this region holding thousands of ISIS prisoners. Now, a prison break there in 2022 led to a 10-day battle to regain control, and the jail remains a major target for ISIS operatives that still exist here as sleeper cells and hideouts in the desert. The jail's warden told us that they are not telling the prisoners that the regime in Damascus was toppled because it could, quote, create disobedience. He believes that ISIS is mobilizing. Back to you.
All right, Holly, thank you very much. The Texas Attorney General sued a New York-based doctor for sending abortion bills to a patient in Texas. We're learning about the contentious legal battle up ahead. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Here's a look at some of the top stories we're following. A community in Florida is mourning a deputy who was killed in the line of duty this weekend. The incident happened Sunday afternoon in Charlotte Harbor, just north of Fort Myers. Officials say the deputy pulled over a white pickup truck for a traffic stop. The driver reportedly pulled out a rifle and fatally shot the officer. The suspect fled but was later found and shot dead by another police officer. In Maine, a new monument will honor the late Labor Secretary Frances Perkins. President Biden is set to sign a proclamation and formally announce the plans. Perkins served as Labor Secretary under Franklin D. Roosevelt and was the first woman appointed to fill a presidential cabinet seat. She's credited with helping establish policies behind FDR's New Deal. And South Korea voted to impeach President Yoon Suk-yeol. The matter now goes to the country's parliament with the first court hearing set for December 27th. You'll remember Yoon came under fire for declaring martial law in the country earlier this month, accusing members of his government of being aligned with North Korea. The court has 6 months to decide if Yoon should be removed or if he can stay in office. Lloyd Austin is the nation's first African-American defense secretary and an outspoken supporter of diversity in the military. He believes it is still a strength for the armed forces. But President-elect Trump's pick to lead the Defense Department disagrees. I want to bring in CBS News senior national correspondent Charlie D'Agata for more on this. Charlie, we've heard that Trump's pick for defense secretary wants to take the military. Okay, I don't understand what any of that means in the prompter. Let me just ask you. We've heard the words that Pete Hegseth has suggested he would undertake were he to be the defense secretary of the United States. He's talked about going back to the pre-woke version of the Department of Defense. He talks about not having women serve in combat arms, which is something that I interviewed a young artillery officer in the Marine Corps a few years ago, Charlie, and she didn't even know a world where women were not able to be in combat arms because she went to the military academy at Annapolis before that was even a thing. And so what are some of the things that would distinguish Lloyd Austin and Hegseth beyond those?
Yeah, well, Vlad, first of all, I would highly recommend anybody watching now to go to the website when they get a chance to see David Martin's excellent profile of Secretary Austin on our Sunday morning program, because he addresses these issues head on. So Hegseth has accused the Pentagon of weakening its forces by ramming stuff. Those are his words, like selection, gender, and race. That when the Pentagon says diversity is our strength, that's a bunch of garbage. Again, his words. So, as you said, Austin is the first African-American Secretary of Defense. Before that, the first African-American to command a division in combat. That was in Iraq. Also the first African-American to command an entire theater of war. So in essence, like, his argument is saying, look, I know where this is coming from. I've been there. I've worked my way on up. His Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Charles C.Q. Brown, is also an African-American. But he really doubled down when it came to women in combat, which Hegseth has said he's against. He said it weakens the frontline forces. I have to say, he's not alone in that argument. But, Austin said he's seen women in combat. He doesn't need to guess at it, in his words. He recalled in that interview with David, when he was facing battle in combat in Iraq, he said to the group there, look, if you don't want to be part of this fight, I won't think less of you. And one of them piped up, said, look, and I'm quoting him here, he said, sir, what are you talking about? And he said, well, what they were telling me was like, quit talking, let's get to the fight. And Vlad, as you said, I've done countless embeds in some of the most dangerous areas in the world, and women were right there on the front lines.
Be interesting, beyond the controversy that Mr. Hegseth has faced for some of his past actions, to see how senators, both on the right and the left, Democrat and Republican, react to some of those things that he said that he would like to implement should he be named the defense secretary. So that's to be continued. Let me ask you about something else, Charlie. Over the weekend, the USS Harry S. Truman Carrier Group entered the CENTCOM area of responsibility. What does that mean for people who may not get it?
Yeah, well, okay, so let's break it down. First of all, the Carrier Strike Group entered CENTCOM region of the AOR, Air Responsibility. That's the military's term. So it includes the carrier itself and the fighter aircraft on board, 2 guided missile destroyers, and a cruiser, the USS Gettysburg in this case. So the official reason, this came from the statement from the DoD over the weekend, is to ensure stability and security. That CENTCOM region, that encompasses most of the Middle East. That's why we hear it all the time. So the Truman had been in the European Command, which is in the Mediterranean, really just off the coast of like Israel, so not far away. But the CENTCOM region itself has had 1, if not 2, carrier strike groups in that region. And that all happened after October 7th, when Israel began facing threats not just from Hezbollah, but Iran. So it's been a few weeks since a carrier has been there. At times, the U.S. Military has been directly involved. Excuse me, I've got a cold. In intercepting missiles from both. They've been intercepting missiles from Houthis in Yemen. That's also part of that CENTCOM region. And of course, we got to say it. They're facing more instability in Syria. There are roughly 900 U.S. service members there that are deployed. You saw that in Hawley's report. Force protection is the #1 priority for the Defense Department. So I guess part of the decision making would be force protection in that process. And there is no greater flex than a carrier and its strike group. So I wouldn't necessarily see it as like an escalation. The entire region remains unstable, but this just gives the military command at CENTCOM the options for whatever may come.
Excellent breakdown as always, Charlie. Appreciate it, my friend. Thank you.
Thanks, Vlad.
All right, the future of abortion access and mail-order medicine could be impacted by a new lawsuit just filed by the Attorney General of Texas. Ken Paxton is suing a doctor from New Paltz, New York, for prescribing abortion pills to a woman in his state where there is a near total ban on the procedure. In New York, doctors are shielded from out-of-state prosecution. CBS News correspondent Jason Allen is live in Dallas and joins me now to discuss. So tell me more about this lawsuit, Jason.
So good morning, Vlad. In order to understand where this is coming from, we have to go back to the late spring, early summer. There was, according to the lawsuit from Paxton, there was a 20-year-old woman here where we are in Collin County, just north of Dallas, who became pregnant. And then in mid-July, July 16th, the suit says that she asked the biological father of the child to rush her to the hospital, that she was experiencing bleeding. So he did that, and the suit says that when he was there, he was told by the doctors and nurses that treated the woman that she, quote, had been approximately 9 weeks pregnant. It appears from the suit that he didn't know about the pregnancy. With that information, the suit says he went home. He suspected that she may have done something to end it and found 2 prescription bottles, 2 different pills that are drugs used to induce an abortion. And the suit says that both of those pills were prescribed by this doctor out of New York, a Dr. Maggie Carpenter with Abortion Coalition for Telemedicine. Of course, Texas has strict laws on abortion, outline it in most cases. Doctors are not allowed to prescribe abortion pills by mail. They're not allowed to prescribe pills for a woman who's beyond 49 days pregnant. There has to be follow-up interviews or follow-up appointments if something like that is used. The suit also says that the doctor violated Texas law by not being licensed to practice medicine in Texas. And in addition, you have to have admitting privileges at a hospital here within 30 miles of where the abortion is performed. So for all of those reasons, that is why Paxton has now filed this lawsuit and is seeking as much as $100,000 for each of the counts that that Paxton says the doctor in this case is violated.
So what are people saying about the impact that this case could have, not only on abortion access, but that mail-order medicine and shield laws potentially too? I mean, what kind of precedent does this set?
Right. And so let's talk about access first, because there is that situation with the pills, because you have groups like ACT out of New York that are set up really specifically, intentionally, to be able to provide these drugs to women who need them in these states where they now have strict abortion laws. So the question comes up, and what we'll be watching for is there any change in behavior by these groups to provide these pills? Do they keep sending them? If they do they leave themselves at risk to lawsuits like this? Do they have to come from somewhere else? Do the pills potentially have to come from overseas? And then does it take longer to get to the women who are looking for them? Are they able to get them at all? beyond that, then we get into the legal questions, Vlad, of these states that now have these differing laws, because each of the states here are acting really in accordance with their own laws. Texas has its laws, and it appears to have the right to go after this doctor. New York has this shield law, which says it won't cooperate with any attempts to prosecute doctors who are acting in this way. Of course, states typically, they work together. If someone was to assault someone here in Texas, it would be New York that would recognize that. In this case, though, the states don't recognize each other's laws. It's likely that this is something that's eventually going to have to make its way to the Supreme Court, and we'll have to see if the court decides that there are potential exceptions in these cases, Vlad.
All right, Jason Allen for us this morning. I appreciate it, Jason. Thank you. Fake AI-generated images are causing real harms. 60 Minutes uncovered nearly 30 incidents in U.S. schools where AI nudes of minors are being created and shared. Frustrated parents and students forced to deal with the consequences are demanding legal action. 60 Minutes correspondent Anderson Cooper has the story.
When you first heard the rumor, you didn't know that there were photos or a photo of you?
No, we didn't know. I think that was like the most chaotic day I've ever witnessed.
In a school, somebody gets an inkling of something and it just spreads.
It's like rapid fire. It just goes to everyone. And so then when someone hears this, it's like, wait, like AI? Like no one thinks that could like happen to you.
Francesca Mani knew nothing about Nudify websites when she discovered she and several of the girls at Westfield High School in New Jersey had been targeted. According to a lawsuit later filed by one of the other girls through her parents, a boy at the school uploaded photos from Instagram to a site called Clothoff. We're naming the site to raise awareness of its potential dangers. There are more than 100 of these Nudify websites. A quick search is all it takes to find them. Clothoff is one of the most popular, with more than 3 million visits last month, according to Graphica, a company that analyzes social networks.
To talk more about this disturbing trend, I want to bring in tech gaming and culture reporter William Antonelli. William, this is incredibly disturbing. And the one thing that I sort of keep thinking in watching a story from Anderson about these sites creating fake nudes of individuals is I've yet to see a story where AI is being used for something actually beneficial to civilization and humanity. Perhaps it does have applications, maybe in the military or in the business world, business to business, but I've yet to see anything that the consumers have access to that is good. Am I missing something?
I think that you have a very good point. I think that the majority of consumer-grade tools, they've been advertised as, let's say, oh, we can save you time by writing an email. We can save you time by making an image for you that you can share with your friends. But as you've noted, these are tools that can be very easily misused, most especially here at making fake images or fake text that then can be passed off as real in an attempt to sort of trick the public.
Yeah, so the FBI, as you know, has been warning about the threat of sextortion. That's what they're calling it among children. Is it a possibility that some of these images that are created with this AI tool are being sold?
Oh, absolutely. One of the biggest ways that this sort of sextortion happens is on chat apps like, say, Telegram, for example. People will go on Telegram to find so-called AI artists. They'll give those artists, let's say, 10 pictures of someone they know, and they'll pay that artist. And then the artist will come back to them with that same person, but now nudified using the AI. So in that sense, these pictures are absolutely being sold. We also have some other people who will make, let's say, 100 images, not necessarily of real people, but of images, AI images that are based on pictures of real people, and then they'll sell those.
So are there any laws protecting the victims of this kind of internet activity or laws to punish the bad actors? And what are the CEOs who are responsible for either AI applications like ChatGPT or the guy or the woman or the person who runs, what's that site called?
Clothoff.
Clothoff. I mean, what are they saying?
So that gets a little bit complicated. As you know, with any law in the U.S., it really depends on where you're living. There is a federal statute that says that AI imagery of underage people is illegal, but that's not often enforced. And when it comes to the states, depending on what state you live in, that sort of thing may be classed as revenge porn, which is illegal. Or in some cases, you might go to the authorities and they'll say, well, this isn't real. What do you want us to do about it? And it becomes even harder when it comes to prosecuting the actual people who own these websites, like Clothoff. Clothoff, in particular, is owned by a shell company of a shell company, which is run by people in separate countries. So whether or not you want to prosecute them, it's going to require a worldwide effort. And when it comes to the CEOs, just last month, a number of Congress people actually sent a letter to both Tim Cook of Apple and Satya Nadella of Google, trying to ask them, what are you doing to proactively stop the flow of apps like these that can nudify real people? They haven't gotten a response yet, but I believe that the response from these CEOs in the past, when asked about AI abuses, has generally been, you know, we don't condone this sort of thing. People can do what they want. We don't want people to do what these sort of things, but they can without us knowing about it. And essentially, they'll say, well, you know, the good things about AI, they definitely outweigh the bad. But as you noted right at the start of this program, that isn't always the case.
Yeah, I haven't seen any indication of that. And it's interesting to me that you can provide children with iPhones or with Google phones or Android devices, and you can sort of, as you set them up, you can set them up for children, but even in setting it up, it allows children to access these social media sites, which I think is a problem. And these CEOs should say, look, if you're setting up a device for a child, the child can in no way, shape, or form download Instagram or TikTok or any of these things that could be detrimental to them. Then perhaps you'd see a change. But it doesn't seem that, because as you know, William, they want sort of a cradle to grave use of their products and technology. So, absolutely. Really interesting reporting, William Antonelli, for us this morning. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. On the bench, the highest court in the land, and performing on Broadway, Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson had her dreams come true. We're going to talk more about her debut. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Christmas and the start of Hanukkah are just 9 days away, and airports are bracing for more record-setting travel. The holiday rush will peak next week. CBS News senior transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve has a preview.
Atlanta area high school teacher Jojo de Guzman is heading to Prague and Austria during the upcoming holidays, a trip he's been planning for months.
I go search for the best flights, the best rates in hotels.
De Guzman will be among the record-setting 119.3 million AAA expects to travel between next Saturday and New Year's Day, narrowly edging out the previous record set in 2019. Most, 107 million, will drive, finding gas prices hovering around $3 a gallon, nearly 15 cents cheaper than a year ago.
We haven't seen gas prices this low in 3.5 years.
The nation's airlines also expect a record. More than 54 million will fly, with the travel rush starting next Thursday and stretching until Monday, January 6th. For United Airlines, that means nearly 10 million passengers. CEO Scott Kirby.
December is likely to be the best December in the history of United Airlines.
What keeps, do you think, driving these record number of people?
You know, I actually believe that coming out of COVID created a new urgency, a new appreciation for travel and experience.
But that experience will cost you more this year. Domestic airfare for Christmas is averaging $371 round trip, up 8% from 2023, and last-minute flights to Europe have surged 38%. For Jojo de Guzman, booking early and going somewhere new is the best gift he could give himself this holiday season.
I've heard they have good Christmas markets in Vienna, as well as in Prague.
Airfare tracker Hopper says if you haven't booked, you need to do it quickly, because in the last few weeks leading up to Christmas last year, on average, round-trip airfare jumped by $100. Busiest days to fly will be the Friday and Sunday before and after Christmas. On the roads, AAA says the busiest day to drive will be the Sunday before Christmas. Chris Van Cleve, CBS News, Phoenix.
I think what I like about it is that I am having a very strongly negative reaction to it. Like I hate it.
That, of course, was Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson making her Broadway debut this weekend. It happened in a one-night-only appearance in the musical comedy & Juliet. Jackson had previously discussed her love of theater and her dream to be the first justice on Broadway. I asked her if she ever thought what critics might say as she prepared for the role. Here's what she said.
Other justices actually have done somewhat similar things. I just also think it's very important to remind people that justices are human beings, that we have dreams, and that we are public servants, and we're not so detached from the people that we serve.
At one point in her youth, Justice Jackson says she considered acting as a career instead of pursuing law. She says that doing both is proof that anything is possible. Just get this. Back in her college application to Harvard, she wrote that she wanted to be the first black woman Supreme Court Justice of the United States, also to have a role on Broadway. There have only been 116 Supreme Court justices in the entire history of the United States. So it's a rare group of people, and now rarer still, one who's made their Broadway debut. It's an incredible story for whoever you are and however you think about politics and jurisprudence in this country. All right, let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with the last look at the national forecast. Hey, Grant.
Hey, Vlad, look, very active across the entire country as we head throughout the week. Several systems navigating across the continental United States. You've got the atmospheric river producing low-level rainfall, higher elevation snow, and then you've got several systems that will be moving across the country, one of which is moving across the Northeast this morning. You've got another one that's moving out of the Mississippi Valley and eventually into the Northeast as we head into tomorrow. Watch here. This is the forecast as we make our way through the next 24 to 48 hours. A lull in the activity into Tuesday evening while the atmosphere recharges. Another system moves out of the west. It taps into the Gulf of Mexico, pulls up some of that moisture. This one, though, will have some Arctic air behind it. Relatively mild conditions at first for the next couple of days. But watch this. In fact, most of the country near or slightly above normal as we go into the second half of the week into the weekend. We go from 15 degrees above normal to now 15 degrees below normal in New York with highs on Sunday only in the 20s. Vlad, back to you.
All right, Grant, thank you very much. That does it for me, folks, but stay right where you are. After the break, Elizabeth Cook is live from San Francisco with all the news breaking from coast to coast. This is CBS News 24/7.